Welcome to News 9 Special. I'm Verghese Abraham. First up, let's take a look at what's happening when it comes to the war between Israel and Hamas, which has now entered the 71st day. Let's get you the latest update from the war front. What we understand is that the IDF has accidentally killed 3 hostages. This is the big news that we are tracking for the day as well. 250,000 is the number of Israelis displaced as of now because of the war. 1.7 million total number of Palestinians have been displaced as well, and 930,000 is the number of Palestinians who are internally displaced in Gaza. So they have a huge number of displaced individuals because of this war. And there is other issue that's come out is that Biden's advisor has now played down the differences with Israel over war effort. Biden has been trying to push Israel to in fact scale down the level of the war that is in fact going on, and IDF says it has recovered bodies of 2 soldiers who have been abducted by the Hamas. Meanwhile, Israeli military has mistakenly killed 3 hostages in Gaza that is held by Hamas. Now, IDF spokesperson claims that the military thought that the hostages were a threat and fired by mistake. The military is sorry and will check everything carefully. Take a look at this report.
I would like to update the public with difficult and painful news about an event that occurred earlier today. During the battles in Shujaa, the entire IDF mistakenly identified 3 kidnapped Israelis as a threat. As a result, the force fired at them and they were killed. After the shooting, during a scan and examination, an immediate suspicion arose regarding the identity of the dead, and their bodies were quickly transferred for examination in Israel, and there the hostages were identified. Yotam Haim, his memory is blessed, who was kidnapped from Kfar Aza by the terrorist organization Hamas on October 7th. Samar Talalka, his memory is blessed, who was kidnapped from Nir Am by the terrorist organization Hamas on October 7th. And another hostage whose name we will not mention at the request of his family.
Israeli and Palestinian representatives to the United Nations made their case in favor and against a ceasefire before the General Assembly on Friday. Speeches from Ambassador to the Permanent Observer Mission of the State of Palestine, Riyad Mansour, and the Israeli representative to the UN, Gilad Erdan, came after the General Assembly passed a resolution calling for a ceasefire on Tuesday. The resolution had 153 countries voting in favor and 23 abstaining. The US and Israel, which argue on the ceasefire only benefits Hamas, voted against the measure along with 8 other countries.
It also targets our present and future, killing engineers and doctors and poets and academics. It also targets those who could document the crimes and inform the world, the journalists. We mourn one of those journalists, Samer Abu Dagga, wounded in an Israeli drone strike and left to bleed to death for 6 hours, while ambulances were prevented from reaching him.
The UN refugee chief said a new refugee crisis from Gaza must be prevented, referring to the possibility that hundreds of thousands of people already uprooted by the Israel-Hamas conflict could flee into Egypt. The UN Refugee Agency said that the participants at a major forum had pledged more than $2.2 billion towards global refugee crisis in a move that the United Nations chief said could help forge a consensus to address refugee crisis in places like Myanmar, Yemen, Somalia, as well as in Gaza. Thousands of people from aid agencies, businesses and civil society attended the 3-day event in Geneva, Switzerland, as the number of displaced people and refugees surpassed a record 114 million people due to conflicts, poverty and climate change. UNHRC hosts the Global Refugee Forum every 4 years under an existing framework to share responsibilities for refugees fairly. Countries also pledged to take 1 million refugees from third countries by 2030.
During the 3 days during which we have been here, tragically, scores of civilians in Gaza have been killed. Many more have been displaced into an already impoverished corner of an already tiny sliver of land. That violence must stop. That violence must stop. There must be a humanitarian ceasefire now. And like the Secretary General just said, aid must be allowed into Gaza to reach civilians with the speed and quantity that they need and they deserve. Hostages must be released. And I want to be clear. What is already a massive displacement crisis within Gaza must not turn into yet another refugee crisis.
A Houthis-controlled group from Yemen hit 2 ships near the Red Sea. The Houthis say they attacked 2 ships heading to Israel. While the US says it's a threat, the other countries like Germany want them to stop. Meanwhile, big shipping companies stopped sending containers there. Take a look.
At a protest in support of Palestinians in Yemen on Friday, Houthi military spokesman Yahya Sarriya said the Iran-aligned group had attacked 2 more commercial ships heading for Israel.
The Marine forces of the Yemeni armed forces carried out a military operation against 2 ships, MSC Alanya and MSC Palladium, that were heading to the Israeli entity. They were targeted by 2 Marine rockets. The targeting operation came after the refusal of their crews to respond to the calls of Yemeni Marine forces, as well as the fiery warning messages.
A U.S. defense official confirmed there were 2 attacks which he said caused fires on board, though one was not on a ship sighted by the Houthis. Yemen's Houthis have been attacking vessels in Red Sea shipping lanes and firing drones and missiles at Israel, saying they aim to support the Palestinians as Hamas and Israel wage war. The Houthis, who rule much of Yemen, have vowed they will continue with their attacks until Israel stops its offensive in the Gaza Strip. Germany's foreign minister said one of the ships attacked on Friday was German-owned and called for the immediate end to such actions by the Houthis. She also emphasized that the security threat to Israel comes not only from Hamas in Gaza, but also from the Houthis. Meanwhile, Danish shipping company AP Møller-Mærsk told Reuters Friday it will pause all container shipments through the Red Sea until further notice. This comes after a missile on Thursday missed its Maersk Gibraltar ship seen in this file photo, and a separate container vessel suffered another attack on Friday. When asked about the Houthi actions, Saudi Arabia's Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan on Friday expressed concern about their impact.
Of course, we are concerned about the potential for escalation. Our region is very complex, and we do not need any other conflicts to erupt, and therefore we hope that we will be able to avoid any further escalations in our region.
Later on Friday, White House National Security spokesperson John Kirby highlighted the danger for commercial ships in the Red Sea and said he would have more information about a maritime task force soon.
Let us move on to some stories coming in from the national region as well, and of course Chennai, where more than 20,000 people residing on the banks of the Buckingham Canal in North Chennai's Inn Road have been severely affected by the massive oil spill from the Chennai Petroleum Corporation Limited's refinery. Now they prepare to face far-reaching consequences to their health as well as ecosystem on which they depend on for a living. Now, An oil spill caused during the cyclone Michong in Chennai's Ennore Creek is being cleared by 75 boats with 300 personnel deployed. It has been over 10 days since the spill has been reported, and its impact has affected hundreds of families whose livelihoods depend on the coastal habitat, biodiversity as well as the aquatic life. Now, cleanup initiatives have commenced, including the removal of oil-soaked debris in nearby villages. Booms have been set up to contain the oil spread, while an oil skimmer machine is extracting oil from the creek. Plans are in place to deploy 4 additional oil skimmers soon. This is the big news that we are in fact tracking at the moment when it comes to the issue regarding how the oil spill is affecting the whole of Chennai. This particular oil spill is in fact taking place in the canal area, and around 70 boats have been deployed with 300 personnel have been deployed to take care of the spill. This particular spill was reported almost 10 days ago in Chennai, especially as an aftermath of the cyclone Michong, which resulted in heavy rains hitting the district. It is said that this has already left several coastal communities in distress. The oil spill is said to have come from the Chennai Petroleum Corporation, is what is being said. But there is a huge cleanup operation that is being carried out at the moment. There are far-reaching consequences when it comes to the health as well as the long-term effects on the ecosystem on that area on which they are dependent for livelihood. Many of these communities are saying that, especially in Ennore Creek, it is being cleared with a huge force of 300 personnel deployed only for the specific purpose of cleaning up the area. Bengaluru's traffic department data has revealed that the number of accidents on the city's roads has increased drastically in 2023. Data showed an average of 14 accidents per day in 2023 till November, compared to the average of 9 accidents per day in 2022. Reports suggest that with the increase in the number of vehicles on the road, there is an increase in the number of road accidents. Overspeeding remains a major cause of concern, as it was the primary cause behind the increase in the number of accidents. Going by the released data, as many as 823 people were killed in 793 fatal accidents that occurred in Bengaluru in 2023. As many as 3,802 people have suffered injuries in 3,705 non-fatal accidents. A total of 4,499 accidents cases have been registered at different police stations across Bengaluru. Kerala is observing a spike in COVID-19 cases since the last few weeks. While the state reported 479 infections in November, 825 new cases were recorded in the first 8 days of the month alone. So far, the state has reported 2 deaths because of this. This variant, though not severe, has increased the hospital admissions in the state as per the experts. Now, according to experts, the presence of the severe symptoms requiring hospitalization poses a threat. Though the cause is unknown, even after the infection subsides, several patients have been experiencing prolonged symptoms. Experts have said that despite the rising number of infections, the cases are not severe in the majority of patients, and deaths are also negligible. The rise in number of COVID cases in Kerala has come as a worry for the centre as well. It is monitoring the situation in Kerala along with the local health departments. It is being reported that though this is not said to be a severe cases, hospital admissions have increased because of the COVID-19 infections. Meanwhile, the state has also been keeping its health department alert. The rise in cases have been reported in the last few weeks. According to the experts, the presence of severe symptoms requiring hospitalization poses a threat. Though the cause is unknown, even after the infection subsides, several patients have experienced prolonged symptoms. Well, coming up next is a News9 exclusive. Climate change is a global challenge that transcends national borders, and in light of persistent worries about climate change and a sustainable world, India has steadfastly committed to achieving both its long-term and short-term emission targets by 2070. Take a look.
वर्ष 2070 तक भारत नेट जीरो का लक्ष्य हासिल करेगा.
There is certainly a wall of capital coming into the clean tech, climate tech space, not just in India but across the world.
This and more, streaming on world's first news OTT, News9 Plus. Download now.
Welcome back. Meanwhile, the Sultan of Oman, Houthi bin Tariq, has arrived in India and received a warm welcome from the President of India, Draupadi Murmu, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi at Rashtrapati Bhavan. The head of state of the Sultanate of Oman has visited India for a state visit, accompanied by a high-level delegation of senior ministers and officials. According to the Ministry of External Affairs, this marks a significant milestone in diplomatic relations between India and the Sultanate of Oman. During the visit, Sultan Houthi bin Tariq will engage in bilateral discussions with Prime Minister Modi. Prince Harry scored the biggest win yet in his legal war against British tabloids on Friday when London's High Court ruled that he had been a victim of phone hacking and other unlawful acts by Mirror Group journalists with the knowledge of their editors. Take a look.
Prince Harry scored his biggest win yet in his legal war against the UK press on Friday, when London courts ruled he'd been the victim of phone hacking and other unlawful activities by journalists at Mirror Group newspapers. The judge said that MGN editors, including the high-profile former Daily Mirror editor Piers Morgan, knew about these activities. Morgan, a constant critic of Harry and his wife Meghan, has consistently denied any involvement in or knowledge of phone hacking. King Charles's younger son was awarded over $180,000 and, in a statement read by his lawyer David Sherborne, responded to the legal victory.
My commitment to seeing this case through is based on my belief in our need and collective right to a free and honest press, and one which is properly accountable when necessary. I hope that the court's findings will serve as a warning to all media organisations who have employed these practices and then similarly lied about them.
The Prince also called for authorities to take action against those identified as having broken the law. Harry was one of about 100 claimants, including actors and sports stars, who had sued MGN over claims of phone hacking and unlawful information gathering between 1991 and 2011. And Judge Timothy Fancourt gave an excoriating conclusion that there had been widespread hacking and unlawful activities at MGN from 1996 until 2011. He said it even carried on while a public inquiry into illicit practices at British newspapers was taking place. The MGN case is just one of 4 Harry is pursuing at the High Court. He has won the right to take to trial a similar phone hacking case against Associated Newspapers, the publisher of the Daily Mail, and Mail on Sunday. Allegations of unlawful behaviour by News Corp's News Group newspapers, the publisher of The Sun, will also go to trial.
Britain, Japan and Italy have signed an international treaty to establish a program aimed at developing an advanced fighter jet. The 3 nations' defence ministers have announced that it is going to be a landmark deal.
Britain, Japan and Italy have agreed a deal to build a new generation of fighter jet. Defence ministers from the 3 nations signed the accord in Tokyo on Thursday. That sets in motion the Global Combat Air Programme. An early mock-up of the plane has previously been shown off by UK defence giant BAE Systems. The programme is intended to create a next-generation stealth combat aircraft capable of defeating the latest jets from Russia or China. Officials say its radar will provide 10,000 times more information than current systems. Speaking in Tokyo, British Defence Minister Grant Shapps said the need for the new jet was clear.
The risks and problems from Europe to the Indo-Pacific are clear for all to see. And so it is enormously important that we join together across our nations to produce this kind of security for our skies.
The new plane is meant to be in service by 2035. Development efforts will be headquartered in the UK, with the first chief executive for the project to come from Japan. Besides BAE, major firms involved include Italy's Leonardo and UK jet engine maker Rolls-Royce. Reuters has previously reported that Japanese firms including Mitsubishi Heavy Industries will also play a big role. The parliaments of each country must now ratify the agreement.
Now let's understand how the COP28 deal got done. In a historic move at the COP28 in Dubai, over 200 countries agreed to transition away from fossil fuels. Despite initial concerns, strategic diplomacy and collaboration paved the way for a groundbreaking global agreement. Take a look.
We have now reached the end.
For the first time in history, countries have expressed a desire to end the oil age. The COP28 accord from the summit in Dubai calls for transitioning away from fossil fuels. Key players, including conference president Sultan Al Jaber, say it's historic.
You delivered.
This is a sea change moment.
I think this is a global turning point.
Fossil fuels phase out! Some remain dissatisfied with concessions allowing for the use of tech such as carbon capture to keep greenhouse gases out of the atmosphere. But striking a deal was by no means a foregone conclusion. Here's a look at how the COP28 deal got done.
I promised I would roll up my sleeves.
Before the conference, COP28 President Al Jaber was pilloried by environmental activists as untrustworthy. He runs the United Arab Emirates State Oil Company. But he didn't want to oversee a failed conference. Before it started, his office pumped up climate initiatives, like an EU and US-led declaration by nations to triple renewable energy capacity by 2030.
The urgency of this moment is clear.
And a US-China cooperation agreement reached in November. Sources say getting a deal took deft maneuvering by the conference host, as well as back-channel diplomacy from the top envoys of the world's biggest polluters, the US and China. Al Jaber intentionally stirred the pot, sources say. His approach was to put out deliberately provocative drafts for a deal that forced negotiators to reveal the outer limits of their positions, then find common ground. On December 11th, Al Jaber's draft deal outlined a broad menu of options that countries could, not should, take to fight climate change. Those options ranged from carbon capture to reducing fossil fuel use or cutting subsidies. Missing was any mention of a phase-out. That sparked outrage, including from small island nations.
We will not sign our gift certificates. It is our very survival that is at stake.
While scores of countries came to Dubai wanting language around phasing out fossil fuels entirely, it was something oil group OPEC particularly opposed. But the outrage expressed at the summit was the desired effect, according to one source, who said the move made clear where people stood.
Mr. Kerry.
The presidency then took meetings into the early morning hours over the next days.
We're going to work.
What's going on?
And did not release an updated draft until December 13th, a day after the summit's scheduled end. The term phase out remained a red line that some like China and Saudi Arabia would never accept. So U.S. envoy John Kerry and his Chinese counterpart Xie Jinhua found a workaround. They already had a roadmap from their recent climate cooperation in November. Use words that essentially mean the same thing as phase out. With China and the U.S. aligned, it was just a matter of getting OPEC on board. One source said it was Kerry, China, and the Saudis that played a constructive role at the 11th hour. A source familiar with the negotiations said the final flurry of diplomacy ensured the deal would pass.
Greta Thunberg, speaking from Stockholm, criticized the recent COP28 climate deal in Dubai, stating it's a letdown for the most affected nations by global warming. She emphasized that despite the agreement involving nearly 200 countries to initiate cuts in fossil fuel usage and implement various measures like promoting clean energy, it won't suffice to prevent temperatures from surpassing critical levels and halting the worst impacts of the climate change. Listen.
This is the bare minimum. Some people say that this is a first step, but we've already had first steps and that hasn't led us anywhere. The emissions are still increasing. We are experiencing record highs. This text is toothless and it is nowhere even close to being sufficient to keep us within the 1.5 degree limit. It is a stab in the back for those most vulnerable, and it was undemocratic. It was signed when many island states were not in the room. That is completely unacceptable, and we cannot talk about climate justice without having the most affected in the room. I think this COP has once again proven that the COP processes are not working in our favor. They are not designed to solve the climate crisis. They are more working as an alibi for world leaders to say that, oh, we signed this, and they're not actually doing anything. If the COPs would have led to anything, we would have seen results by now. There have been 28 COPs, and that has not led us anywhere, but moving still in the wrong direction. As long as we don't treat the climate crisis as a crisis, and as long as we keep lobby interests influencing these texts and these processes, we are not going to get anywhere. We need to address the root causes.
We slip into a short break now. News and updates will continue on the other side.
Since the last 2 years, Khalistani terror groups are threatening Indian diplomats in Canada, US, UK and Australia. Investigations of these threats led us to the first ever abduction and killing of an Indian diplomat, Ravindra Matre, in UK's Birmingham in 1980.